New tonight, we're learning more about the former UK student now indicted for manslaughter and other charges involving her newborn baby found dead in a closet.
At 4 a.m. on August 27th, 2025, two roommates in a Lexington, Kentucky apartment heard noises, not the kind you roll over and ignore. Not the kind you explain away as a dropped book or someone in the hallway, the kind that knocked a picture clean off the wall, the kind that lasted for almost an hour. One of them grabbed her phone and texted the group Snapchat. "Did you hear that?" The second roommate confirmed. And then the sound stopped, and then there was silence. And then the whole apartment went still, and no one moved, and no one knocked on any door, and no one dialed 3 digits. 5 hours passed. At 9 a.m., their third roommate responded to the Snapchat thread, a 22-year-old University of Kentucky cheerleader. She said she had passed out and fallen. Nothing more, no explanation, no concern, no "is everyone okay?" She fell, and she went back to sleep. Or she said she did. That morning, after she left the apartment, the other two went to check on her. They walked down the hall, and they pushed open her bedroom door, and what they found inside a closet at the back of that room, wrapped, bagged, hidden, would set off a chain of events that would lead to a grand jury, a manslaughter indictment, a rearrest, and one of the most disturbing and widely followed cases in Kentucky's recent history. And the detail buried in that indictment, the detail prosecutors released just last week about what she did in the 30 minutes between giving birth and the moment it was over, changes everything we thought we understood about this case. Stay with me, because we're going to go through every piece of evidence, every charge, every verified detail of the case against Laken Snelling, and none of it is going to ought to be easy to hear. Who was Laken Snelling? Before we get into what happened in that apartment, you need to understand who Laken Snelling was on the University of Kentucky campus, because the gap between her public life and what allegedly unfolded behind a closed closet door is not incidental to this case. It is in many ways the central question. How does someone live in that gap? How do you perform in front of thousands and then go home and perform the performance of ordinary life, all while concealing something this significant? Laken Snelling was 22 years old and a member of the University of Kentucky's stunt team. Those who don't know, stunt is a competitive NCAA-recognized sport that evolved out of cheerleading. It emphasizes partner stunts, pyramids, and tumbling sequences performed in a head-to-head competition format against other schools. It is not a club activity. It is a varsity-level athletic commitment that demands peak physical conditioning, intense practice schedules, and the kind of body awareness that makes you hyper-attuned to your own physical state. UK's program is one of the most decorated in the country. Being part of it is an achievement that reflects years of investment and training. Comes with visibility. You perform in arenas. Your face is recognizable on campus. You are, in the specific social architecture of a major university, someone who is seen. She lived in an off-campus apartment in Lexington with 2 roommates. By all accounts, from her social media presence, she was active, engaged, social. She posted, she connected, she appeared to the outside world and to the people she lived with to be going through a normal senior year. But according to every piece of evidence that has surfaced through court documents and law enforcement case files, she was also carrying a secret that had been growing, literally and figuratively, for 9 months. And nobody in her immediate circle knew, because she made sure of it. The contradiction between those two things, the visibility of her campus life and the invisibility of what she was hiding, is something this trial will have to grapple with. Because jurors are going to look at her public life, and they are going to look at the case file, and they are going to have to understand how both of those things were true at the same time. The night of August 27th. The full timeline. Here is what the case file tells us about that night. Every hour matters in this timeline. So let's go through it exactly. Sometime during the night of August 26th, going into the early morning hours of August 27th, 2025, Laken Snelling gave birth in her bedroom, alone. There was no hospital, there was no 911 call, there was no midwife, no partner, no family member on the phone, no one who had been told. She was by herself in a rented bedroom in a Lexington apartment, and she delivered a full-term baby with no medical assistance. Let's pause on that for a moment because it is easy to move past it in the rush of everything that follows. Delivering a full-term baby alone without medical help is an extreme physical ordeal under any circumstances. The sounds that the roommates described, loud enough to knock a picture off a wall, continuous, lasting approximately 1 hour, are consistent with active labor and delivery, and those sounds were heard through the walls by two people who were home. At 4 a.m., roommate 1 was woken by the noise and immediately texted the group Snapchat. "Did you hear that?" Roommate 2 responded. She had heard it too. "The sounds were forceful enough," she said, "to knock a picture off her wall." They confirmed each other's experience in real time. And then, nothing. They did not go to Laken's door. They did not call out to her. They did not phone for help. And I want to be very clear about something here. That is a completely understandable response at 4 in the morning when you don't know what you don't know. When your roommate later says she fell and passed out, you file that away and you move on with your day. There is no fault to assign to those women. None. But the information they had, heard by both of them, corroborated in real time on a group chat, would later become a critical piece of evidence in the case against Laken Snelling. 5 hours passed. The apartment was quiet. At 9 a.m., Snelling responded to the group chat. She said she had passed out and fallen. That was the entire explanation. She did not follow up. She did not ask if anyone needed anything. She did not mention that she was in pain or distress or needed to see a doctor after a fall significant enough to produce sounds that lasted for an hour. She offered a one-sentence explanation and closed the thread. At some point that morning, Snelling left the apartment. The case file does not specify the exact time or where she went, but she left. And when she was gone, the two roommates went to her room. The case file obtained by WKYT does not specify exactly what prompted them. Concern, curiosity, something they couldn't name. But they went in, and at the back of the room, behind a closet door, they found a deceased infant. The baby was inside a trash bag. The baby was wrapped in a towel. The baby was cold to the touch. Police were called. Emergency services responded. The baby was pronounced dead at the scene. Laken Snelling was arrested 4 days later on August 31st, 2025. She posted a $100,000 bond and was released to house arrest at her parents' home in Tennessee. What was in the closet? Before we go to the autopsy, let's be precise about the physical evidence of the discovery. According to Lexington Police and case file details reviewed by Court TV, the infant was wrapped in a towel, placed inside a trash bag, and concealed in the closet of Snelling's bedroom. The infant was cold to the touch at the time of discovery. Based on the timeline, approximately 5 to 7 hours between the sounds the roommates heard and the point at which the baby was found, the infant had been in that closet for hours. A newborn, in a trash bag, in a closet, in an apartment where two other people had been awake and moving since 4 a.m. If you're feeling something right now, well, if that image is landing somewhere uncomfortable, that is appropriate. Because the question that would define this entire investigation is the one the medical examiner was going to have to answer. At the moment those sounds were happening at 4 a.m. when pictures were falling off walls, was the baby alive? The autopsy and what it confirmed. When a case involves an infant death under circumstances this ambiguous, when the cause and manner of death are not immediately clear, when there is no witness, when the only account comes from the person who is now the subject of a criminal investigation, the autopsy becomes the most important document in the entire case. It is the medical record of what happened to a human being. It is not subject to negotiation or interpretation in the way that statements and intentions are. The body tells the story. And the story the medical examiner told, as confirmed publicly by Fayette County Commonwealth's attorney Kimberly Baird in a statement to WKYT on March 11, 2026, is this.
Baby Snelling was born alive. And then died from asphyxia through unknown means. So
Baby Snelling was born alive, not stillborn, not premature, full term, and born alive into that bedroom on August 27, 2025. That is the medical finding that changed the legal character of everything that followed. because a stillborn baby, as devastating as that is, does not make the handling of the remains a manslaughter case. What happened in that closet with a baby who was not breathing at the time of discovery is one thing. What happened in that room with a baby who had been born alive is something else entirely. The Commonwealth's attorney confirmed it directly. The baby was born alive, and then the baby died. And the cause of death was asphyxia. Born alive, cause of death, asphyxia. Let's hold both of those facts together, because the relationship between them is what the prosecution's entire case is built on. Fact 1, baby Snelling was born alive and full term. Fact 2, baby Snelling died from asphyxia, the medical term for a deprivation of oxygen that results in death. Commonwealth's attorney Kimberly Baird's exact language, as reported by WKYT, baby Snelling was born alive and then died from asphyxia through unknown means. The phrase "through unknown means" is a legal and forensic qualifier. It does not signal that investigators are in the dark. It signals that the physical evidence alone, the autopsy findings, could not definitively establish the specific mechanism by which oxygen was deprived. Was it positional? Was it an obstruction? Was it compression? Asphyxia in a newborn is a finding, not always a complete answer. And in cases where the primary witness is also the subject of criminal investigation, that qualifier is a way of being forensically precise without overreaching. But here's what asphyxia is. It is what happens when breathing stops. In a newborn, it can happen from being placed face down on a soft surface. It can happen from being pressed against something. It can happen from being wrapped in a way that restricts airflow. It can happen from deliberate act or from negligent inaction, from a failure to intervene when intervention was possible and necessary. And in about 4 minutes, you are going to hear what Laken Snelling told police she did after the baby was born. And when you hold that account against this cause of death, you are going to understand why the grand jury did what it did. The concealed pregnancy. How do you hide a full-term baby? There is a question that keeps surfacing in conversations about this case, and it deserves a real answer rather than a shrug. How do you carry a full-term pregnancy to delivery while living with 2 other people and having them not know for certain? The answer is complicated, and it has several layers. First, the roommates did suspect. That is in the case file. Both roommates told police that they had believed Snelling might be pregnant. They had noticed things. People who live together notice weight changes, behavioral shifts, the way someone moves differently, what they eat, what they avoid. These women noticed. What they did not do, for reasons we can only speculate about, reasons that likely include the social complexity of directly asking someone about a potential pregnancy without invitation, is confirm it. They suspected and said nothing to her, and she offered nothing to them. This is not unusual, and it is not a failure. It is the social reality of a question that carries enormous weight, that touches on deeply personal decisions that most people, especially young people navigating friendships, do not ask directly without being given an opening. But she gave no opening. None. What police found on her phone tells the story of how deliberately that silence was maintained. Investigators documented from the device week-by-week pregnancy tracking hashtags she had been browsing. The kind of content that logs each stage of fetal development, what's happening in the body, what symptoms to expect. This is not idle browsing. This is methodical pregnancy monitoring. She was tracking this pregnancy the way an expecting mother tracks a pregnancy, with the same information and the same week-by-week consciousness of what was happening to her body. In addition to the hashtag browsing, police found deleted searches related to pregnancy and photographs of labor. All of it had been deleted from the device before or after the discovery. But deletion is not erasure. Digital forensics can recover more than most people realize, and what was recovered here was sufficient for investigators to document a clear pattern of awareness across what appears to have been the full term. And then there are the 2 social media data points that are not from the case file, but from prior public reporting, and which the prosecution will likely use as character evidence if this goes to trial. Halloween 2023, she dressed as a pregnant woman, and her last TikTok post before August 27th, 2025 included a baby emoji under the word goals. Again, None of that is criminal. A Halloween costume is a Halloween costume, an emoji is an emoji, but in context, these details are not meaningless. They are part of a picture of someone who was aware of pregnancy, who had engaged with the idea of it publicly, and who then, when it was real and undeniable, went silent and concealed it from everyone. The question a jury will ask is, what did that awareness mean for what followed? What she told police? The 30 minutes. This is the part of the case that prosecutors have led with every time they've spoken publicly, and it is the part that, when you hear it in full, explains why a grand jury decided that what happened in that bedroom was not simply a tragedy, it was a crime. After her arrest in August 2025, Laken Snelling made statements to police. Those statements were documented in a court affidavit. Fox News Digital reported on the affidavit in detail on March 11, 2026. These are her words, as documented by investigators. She said she was awake for approximately 30 minutes after giving birth. She said the baby fell to the floor. She said she fell on top of the baby. She said that when she regained awareness, and this is the exact kind of language the affidavit uses, she observed the baby turning blue and purple. She observed the baby turning blue and purple. Blue and purple are the colors of a baby whose oxygen is failing. They are the colors that trigger every emergency response protocol in existence. They are the visual signal that you have minutes, not hours, not days, to act. Every parent who has ever held a child knows those colors are not something you watch. They are something you respond to immediately and with everything you have. She did not call 911. She did not pound on her roommate's doors. She did not put the baby in her car and drive to the hospital 2 miles away. She did not use the phone she had just used to text the group Snapchat hours earlier. She said she wrapped the baby up like a burrito and laid next to it on the floor because, she told police, it gave her a little comfort in the moment. Now put the cause of death back in the room with you. Asphyxia, death caused by oxygen deprivation through unknown means. In a room where a baby was observed turning blue and purple while its mother was awake and chose to wrap it in cloth and lie down beside it, rather than seek help. The grand jury's indictment language is explicit about how prosecutors read that sequence of events. Quote, she intentionally abused the infant and thereby caused death under circumstances which do not constitute murder because she acted under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance. There are two important legal points embedded in that sentence. First, the word intentionally, meaning the prosecution is not arguing that this was an accident. They are arguing that the actions she took after the birth were deliberate choices. Second, extreme emotional disturbance. That phrase is doing specific legal work. In Kentucky, extreme emotional disturbance is a mitigating factor that distinguishes first-degree manslaughter from murder. It acknowledges that a person may have been in a state of profound psychological crisis while still holding them criminally accountable for the outcome of their choices. This is not a defense. This is a charge. The state of Kentucky is saying, we believe you were in extreme distress and we still believe what you did was a crime. The Snapchat warrant and the question of who knew. On March 13, 2026, WKYT obtained and reported on documents from the full case file, including a search warrant that investigators sought for Laken Snelling's Snapchat account. TMZ reported on the same material the same day. Let's talk about why this matters. Investigators could have stopped at the physical evidence, the baby, the closet, the autopsy, the phone. In terms of building a case against Snelling, there is substantial material there already. The fact that they also went after her Snapchat account tells you something. They believe there are communications on that platform that are material to the investigation. They believe someone somewhere was told. Or that there are conversations that reveal her state of mind in the period leading up to August 27th in ways that the physical evidence alone doesn't fully capture. Snapchat is the platform of choice for exactly this kind of communication because, by design, messages disappear. They are not stored by the platform in a way that is easily retrievable without a warrant. And even with a warrant, the results depend heavily on how recently the messages were sent and whether they had been archived. For investigators to seek that warrant means they have reason to believe there is something there or was something there worth pursuing. The results of the Snapchat warrant have not been publicly disclosed as of this video. We do not know what, if anything, was recovered, but the existence of the warrant tells us the investigation has not closed its inquiry into who knew and when. And that brings us to the paternity question, which is its own unresolved thread. 2 ex-boyfriends have been identified through prior reporting and case file details. Isaiah Hall, for whom investigators requested a DNA paternity test, and Connor Jordan, identified through TikTok posts and social media. Neither man has been publicly implicated in any wrongdoing related to this case. The question of paternity matters not because it assigns responsibility to another person, but because it could tell investigators whether anyone who had a reason to know about this pregnancy did know, and whether any of those conversations took place on a platform built to erase itself. As of the most recent public information, paternity has not been officially confirmed. The option she had: 10 minutes. We need to talk about the Safe Haven baby box, because this is the detail that, for many people following this case, is the one that makes everything else even harder to process. A Safe Haven baby box was located approximately 10 minutes from Laken Snelling's apartment. We have verified this against the Safe Haven baby box's website and Google Maps. 10 minutes. The Safe Haven Baby Box program exists in multiple states, including Kentucky, as an extension of Safe Haven laws that have been on the books for decades. Here is what a Safe Haven law means in practical terms. A mother can surrender a newborn anonymously, legally, with no obligation to identify herself, no paperwork, no questions, and no criminal consequences at a designated location within a specified window of time. In Kentucky, that window is 30 days from birth. The Safe Haven Baby Box is a physical component of that program. It is a specially designed, temperature-controlled box, typically installed on the exterior wall of a fire station or hospital, where a mother can place a newborn, close the door, and walk away. An alarm notifies first responders immediately. The baby is retrieved within minutes. The mother is gone. She has broken no law. She faces no charges. Her identity is not sought, and in many cases cannot be legally pursued. No forms, no ID, no court dates, no arraignment, no manslaughter indictment. 10 minutes away, the Kentucky Safe Haven law would have allowed Laken Snelling to surrender that baby up to 30 days after his birth with zero legal exposure. She had 30 minutes of conscious time after he was born. She had a car. She had a phone with GPS. She could have looked up the address of the nearest Safe Haven 6 box, placed the baby in the vehicle, driven 10 minutes, opened a door, and walked away free. She would have faced nothing. Not arrest, not prosecution, not a single legal consequence. Instead, she wrapped the baby in a towel, placed him in a trash bag, and put him in a closet. I am not going to tell you what to feel about that. You already feel something. What I will tell you is that the grand jury felt something too. Something specific enough to put intentionally abused in a criminal indictment. Kentucky's abortion ban, what it means and what it doesn't. You cannot cover this case honestly without acknowledging the legal landscape that surrounds it. And you cannot acknowledge that landscape honestly without being precise about what it explains and what it doesn't. In June 2022, the United States Supreme Court issued its decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, overturning Roe versus Wade and returning the question of abortion access to individual states. Kentucky was among the states with a trigger law already in place. Within weeks of the Dobbs decision, Kentucky's near-total abortion ban went into effect. As of the date of Snelling's delivery in August 2025, abortion was illegal in Kentucky in almost all circumstances. If Laken Snelling became pregnant in late 2024, she was living in a state where terminating that pregnancy was, in most scenarios, not a legal option. That is a fact. It is a documented, verifiable element of the environment she was navigating. And it matters. It matters because access to legal options shapes the choices available to someone in crisis. It matters because fear of legal exposure, fear of judgment, fear of consequences, these are real psychological forces that can drive people to make decisions that, viewed from the outside, appear incomprehensible. If you are afraid of something and every official channel feels like a trap, you retreat from official channels. We understand that context, and we present it here because you deserve the complete picture. What that context does not, cannot explain is what happened after the baby was born. The abortion ban has no bearing on the 30 minutes that followed delivery. At the moment of birth, the question of abortion was legally and biologically moot. The baby was alive. The safe haven law was in effect. The options available to a mother in that moment were real, legal, and accessible. Whatever drove Laken Snelling to the decision she made, and whatever role the legal landscape of Kentucky played in shaping the months that preceded August 27th, the cause of death was asphyxia, not abortion policy. The 30 minutes between birth and the baby turning blue are not explained by what the state of Kentucky did or didn't allow in a clinic. We present the context. We do not use it as a shield. The phone, the deleted evidence. Let's return to the phone because the phone evidence in this case is not a single data point. It is a construction, a timeline of awareness, and it matters enormously because it goes directly to the question of intent. Investigators documented from Snelling's device across the course of their forensic review the following: browsing of week-by-week pregnancy tracking content, including hashtags associated with fetal development stages, pregnancy-related searches, photographs consistent with labor. All of this material had been deleted from the device. She attempted to clean it. As we noted earlier, digital forensic recovery tools are sophisticated enough to reconstruct deleted content in many cases, and what was recovered here was documented in the case file. Now add to that the broader social media footprint. Halloween 2023. She dressed as a pregnant woman. Her last TikTok post prior to August 27th included a baby emoji under the word goals. Neither of those things standing alone is evidence of a crime. They become significant in context. In the context of a case file that shows her tracking a pregnancy week by week, deleting the evidence, and then giving birth alone in a bedroom without calling for any help. What the phone evidence establishes, and what the prosecution will use it to establish, is that this pregnancy was known to her, tracked by her, documented by her, and then concealed by her across a period that appears to span its full duration. The deletion of the searches and photos after the birth is being charged as tampering with physical evidence, and the fact that she deleted it at all, rather than simply not having it, is itself telling. You delete things you know you shouldn't have. The grand jury indictment. First-degree manslaughter. On March 10, 2026, a Fayette County grand jury handed down a formal indictment against Laken Snelling that upgraded her charges to include first-degree manslaughter. This is not the charge she was originally arrested on. The original arrest in August 2025 covered the other charges: abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, concealing the birth of an infant. The manslaughter charge is new, and it comes after the grand jury reviewed the complete body of evidence. The autopsy, the affidavit, the phone forensics, the roommate statements, everything. Grand juries do not make final determinations of guilt. They determine whether there is probable cause, sufficient evidence to formally charge someone with a crime and require them to stand trial. For a grand jury to add first-degree manslaughter to this case means they reviewed the evidence and concluded that there is probable cause to believe that Laken Snelling's actions or inactions caused the death of that baby, and that those actions or inactions meet the legal definition of first-degree manslaughter under Kentucky law. That is a significant threshold to have crossed. 2 days later, on March 12, 2026, Snelling was rearrested and booked into the Fayette County Detention Center. Her father posted a $10,000 bond, the bond specifically set for the new manslaughter charge, and she was released back to house arrest. She is currently living between her mother's and father's homes in Tennessee under the conditions of that house arrest arrangement. Her arraignment on the new charges is scheduled for April 10th, 2026. She has pleaded not guilty. What first-degree manslaughter means in Kentucky. Let's break down exactly what Laken Snelling is now facing, because the weight of these charges deserves precision. First-degree manslaughter in Kentucky is classified as a Class B felony. The sentencing range for a Class B felony in Kentucky is 10 to 20 years. state prison. The specific charging language that she intentionally abused the infant and thereby caused death under circumstances which do not constitute murder because she acted under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance establishes two things for trial. First, it establishes that the prosecution is going to argue intentionality. The word intentionally in that charge is not accidental. The state of Kentucky is not saying she made a mistake or that she was negligent. They are saying she made choices, deliberate choices, that caused a baby's death. What those choices were precisely is what a jury will have to evaluate. Second, the extreme emotional disturbance language is a statutory mitigator in Kentucky law. It's the specific element that places this in the manslaughter category rather than murder. Under Kentucky revised statutes, a person commits murder when they intentionally cause the death of another person. But if that intentional act was committed under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance, a condition with a reasonable explanation, the charge is reduced to first-degree manslaughter. The explanation doesn't have to justify the action. It has to be reasonable in the context of a human being under extreme psychological strain. Prosecutors are essentially saying, we believe she intended what she did, and we believe her state of mind at the time was severely disturbed. And we believe both of those things are true simultaneously, and that combination is first-degree manslaughter. The abuse of a corpse charge relates to the physical treatment of the baby's remains, wrapped in a towel, placed in a trash bag, concealed in a closet. Kentucky law criminalizes the unlawful treatment of a dead body regardless of the circumstances of the death itself. The tampering with physical evidence charge covers the deletion of the phone content, the pregnancy searches, the photographs of labor, the tracking hashtags. If it can be demonstrated that she deleted this material specifically to obstruct the investigation, that is a separate criminal act. And the concealing the birth of an infant charge is its own statute. In Kentucky, it is illegal to conceal the birth of a child for the purpose of concealing a death. 4 charges, 10 to 20 years on the most serious one alone, an arraignment in 3 weeks, a not guilty plea already entered. What remains unknown? Here is where we are as of mid-March 2026, and here is what this case has still not resolved. We do not know exactly what happened in those 30 minutes. We have her statement, we have the autopsy finding, we have the cause of death. But the specific sequence of events, the exact moment at which the baby's oxygen was compromised, the exact circumstances in which that happened, is something that the forensic evidence qualifies as unknown means. The space between her account and the medical finding is where this trial will be contested. We do not know what the Snapchat warrant produced. The warrant exists. It was sought and presumably executed. The results are sealed as of this video. If those messages reveal that someone knew, a friend, a former partner, anyone, and that information was withheld from investigators, it could significantly expand the scope of this case. We do not know who the baby's father is. The DNA test for Isaiah Hall has not yielded publicly confirmed results. Connor Jordan has been identified but not further implicated. Whether the father knew, whether there were conversations, whether anyone in her support network was aware and chose silence, that is an open question this investigation has not closed. And there is the question that no court document, no autopsy, no warrant return can ever fully answer. Why? Why not the hospital? Why not the safe haven box? Why not a friend, a counselor, a parent, a hotline? These are not questions with easy answers, and they are not questions this case will definitively resolve, but they are the questions that people will carry out of that courtroom, whatever the verdict. Here is what we know for certain. A baby was born alive and full term in a Lexington, Kentucky apartment on August 27, 2025. That baby died from asphyxia. His mother was awake for 30 minutes after his birth. She saw him turn blue and purple. She did not call for help. She wrapped him in cloth and lay beside him on the floor. And 10 minutes from where she sat, there was a box, a legal, anonymous, no consequence box. That would have let her walk away from all of it without facing a single day in court. A grand jury has now said that what happened in that room was not a tragedy. It was a crime. Laken Snelling's arraignment is scheduled for April 10th. If this case goes to trial, and with a first-degree manslaughter charge on the table, it very likely will, We will be here for every development, every filing, every piece of evidence, every legal argument. The case of baby Snelling deserves that. He deserved 30 minutes of a different kind. He deserved the box, the fire station, the stranger's arms, the 10-minute drive. He deserved the option his mother had and did not take. We will keep going until we know the full story. Legal disclaimer. Laken Snelling has pleaded not guilty to all charges and is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. All information in this video is drawn from verified court documents, police affidavits, official statements from the Fayette County Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, and named news sources including WKYT, Fox News Digital, TMZ, and Court TV. This video does not make a determination of guilt.